Hey everyone, welcome back to the garden. Today we're going to start our winter. I don't know why that's so hard to get right. Hey everyone, welcome back to the garden. Today we're actually going to start our fall cleanup. Now this will take us weeks, so you won't see all of it today. We're going to start cutting back some perennials, and we're going to use 3 different tools to cut back 3 different kinds of perennials. So you can see if you have these kinds of perennials in your garden, which method works best. We're also going to pull cannas and caladiums. We'll leave the dahlias for another day. And we're going to talk a little bit of, the different arguments as to when you should clean up, whether it's spring or fall. So come garden with us today and let's make a start. Now there's a whole debate on whether or not you should cut back your perennials in the fall or wait till spring. We do it in the fall 90% of the way anyway, because we have so many perennials and we're so busy in the spring. We would never get to our spring gardening if we had to wait and cut back all of our perennials. We have a whole meadow full of native perennials, trees and shrubs for insects to winter over, and little rodents and field mice, things of that nature. Closer to the house, I like things to be neat going into the spring, so that's why we cut back everything here. So what I'm going to start with, and that's up to you. It's your garden. If you want to cut it back, you cut it back. If not, then don't. That can be quite a controversial topic, and I'm not going to get into that here. But I'm going to start with these coneflowers. And again, we're going to see how the hedge trimmer works as opposed to going around with a pruner. And when you're cutting back coneflowers for the season, typically you would want to leave any basal foliage. There'll be foliage coming right from the ground. There doesn't look to be too much here, probably because it's been such a dry summer. So we're just going to take all of these dead stems right to the ground. Yeah, so I think that actually did a nice job. Much quicker too. And there is some basal foliage left. You can see anything green there, I will leave. And as far as what to cut back in the fall and what to leave to the spring, the only thing we don't cut back is 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, and anything else that may need protection over the winter. 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 needs its prior year's growth to protect the crown of the plant over the winter, so we leave those standing. But things like coneflowers, again, if you leave that basal foliage, it's fine. So you can cut the dead flower stalks completely back. Something else that you can only remove the stalks and leave the foliage is stackies, and I'll show you an example of that. A lot of plants get mushy over the winter though, so that's why we tend to prune things back in the fall. It just gets harder to prune them back in the spring when they're all mushy. Now you can let things compost. I can't let these compost here. I can't just leave that laying there. I don't want it blowing all over the place. First of all, I don't want it getting into neighbors' yards. That's, I don't like my messes in my neighbors' yards. But also because we have had issues with some of our coneflowers in the last couple of years developing coneflower rosette disease and aster yellows. Don't want to leave diseased foliage in your garden. That's just going to allow those diseases to become more prevalent in the next year. So I will clean up everything that we remove for the most part. I mean, a couple of flower stalks here and there may get left, but again, closer to the house, I like things to be neat as we move further away from the foundation plantings. If some stuff gets left behind and gets to compost, as long as it's not diseased, then I'm fine with that. So here's an example of a couple of stackies that still have their old flower stalks still standing. Stackies are pretty easy to actually just pull, but since that one just broke, let's see how easy it'll be to prune these with the hedge trimmer. That was pretty easy actually, and stackies are a plant where you can kind of see what I mean by basal foliage. Foliage can be evergreen on these, so that will leave. Just clean up the flower stalks. I feel like I could have gotten a little bit lower, but again, the stackies, spent flower stalks are so easy to pull. That's easy to clean up. So while I was up doing some perennial cleanup, my husband's down here pulling some caladiums. Let's see how that's going. Again, it's just basically pulling the tuber out of the ground, letting it dry, and then storing it in a cool, dark place for the winter. And they do expand. I don't know if expand is the right word. They do multiply underground, so you could plant 3. When you pull them out in the fall, you may have 7, 8, or 9. So just be aware of that with caladiums. And in today's video, I actually thought I was going to pull the annuals out of our 2 urns. You see one of them behind me. There's fern in there. I did replace some of the petunias with the ornamental cabbage, and there are sunbatians because I do have some more kale, cabbages, kale, and pansies to go in there, but it's too nice. It's such a nice day today, and we're going to be in the 60s a few days this week. I feel like the annuals will go just a little bit longer, and that'll give me a chance to focus on something else. And one more perennial that I will cut back either in the spring or the fall are the alliums. You can see how pretty they look at this time of the year. Hopefully you can see with my shadow there. I mean, they stand up straight and tall. They're fairly sturdy. So unless we have really, really heavy rains, which we can in the winter, as well as heavy, heavy snow, those will stand up and provide some winter interest. So, you know, we'll revisit it at one point during the late fall, early winter to see if they need to be cut back. But until then, I'm going to leave those standing. So one other thing we're going to get cut back today are these whirling butterflies. Typically those are annuals, but we have had luck with this particular, I think we have 2, one on each side here, and they come back every year, but you can see they can get quite woody. I mean, they get a really, really strong woody base. So that's why we cut those back. Now there's no basal foliage on these. They pretty much are very wispy. And most of the leaves and the flowers are at the top. That's kind of why they're called whirling butterflies. I think we actually need to think about moving these in the spring. It's just too congested in here, but for now we're just going to cut them back. And really, my husband's going to do this one with the pruners because they are a little thick. Really, you just go down as close to the ground as you can. Just cut as if you were cutting a shrub, really. We might have 2. Do we have 2 on each side?
We have 1 on each side.
1 on each side. And with them cut back, it'll open it up a little bit here. You see the poor little Anna's magic ball in there. Maybe it'll start getting some more sun. So getting things cut back and cleaned up in the fall can be almost as satisfying as if you were cleaning it up in the spring or planting something pretty in the spring. I'm going to walk by and it just looks so much cleaner. My husband said, oh, I think I do see a bloom on our 𝗟𝗶𝗲𝗬𝗟𝗏. I See if I can get in there. Look. Woo, pretty. It's kind of weird that they're all up against the house though. And they're blooming a little bit later this year. Maybe it's just because it was so hot and dry. And then on this side you can see again just an open space where the perennial or the annual was, whatever you want to call that, whirling butterflies. And again, our little Anna's magic ball can get some more light. But yeah, I do see some more bloom or buds. There's a bud. Yep, there's a bud down here. I really was not expecting this to bloom again this year. But it did. Exciting. So one more thing we're going to cut back actually are the salvia. We have 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 salvia or salvia nemorosa on the side of our house here. They could probably go a few more weeks. They're not blooming. I cut them back probably a couple months ago, and they have put on lots of new fresh clean foliage, but they're not going to bloom again. And the reason why I want to cut these back is because I'm going to show, so we cut some perennials back with the hedge trimmer. Some you just saw with the pruners. These we're going to use grass shears because their stems are a little bit smaller and easier to cut with the grass shears. So this will give you an idea of 3 different types of perennials that you can prune back in 3 different tools. So yeah, it's just easier to bunch these up and go at them with the grass shears. The clippers, the stems aren't strong enough, I find, to use pruners with. They tend to twist and not cut, but with the grass shears, it just goes right through. Just give you a quick before shot of these 2 down here and then what it looks like all cleaned up. So one reason why it's a good idea to clean up in the fall, again, that's a debate you can have with yourself, but is when you're cleaning up, you might find things that are growing that you didn't plant and you need to get rid of, and cleaning up in the fall is a good time to see those. I'm going to turn you around and show you what I mean. So right here behind my husband, we have a 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. And we have another one over here. The 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲 are not native plants. I don't know what variety this one is, so I can't give you the specific cultivar, but it is quite invasive, and we are constantly finding little ones. So when you clean up in the fall, you can find them and pull them out. I mean, just like home flowers, we don't need thousands of little 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲s all over. If we waited until spring, maybe didn't get out here until April to clean up these perennials, these 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲s would already be starting to put on some spring growth. They'd be a lot harder to pull out of the ground. So that's another reason why we clean up in the fall. We can take care of problems like that. Again, just cleaning up some things that the fall cleanup process revealed. We used to have Mexican feathergrass here. I think it was called 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲. I think it's now called 𝗟𝗏, which again can spread quite rampantly. They're considered an annual, but I guess maybe it's a little bit protected over here, and they started to pop up this year and last in our walkway here. So while we're going through cleaning up, and you can see that little grassy thing? That's a Mexican feathergrass all throughout here. Good to clean them up now, because they will, in some climates, winter over, and then you'll have a bigger mess on your hand next year. So as we walk down the path, you can see, I think you can see, it just looks much cleaner and fresher. You can see where you might need to remove things next year, where you might need to add. I just like cleaning up in the fall for that reason. And even though there's still some debris, to me, it still just looks a lot cleaner and fresher. Okay, the last thing we want to do, we're not going to go into great detail, but we're definitely going to pull our cannas. You can see them there in the herb garden. Okay, I am going to let my husband tackle this because if I remember correctly from last year, these cannas are quite large and quite difficult to get out of these 2 containers. Again, they can be divided. They tend to multiply over the summer, and you could end up, again, from one, we planted 2 last year, and I don't know how many are in these containers now. We definitely do not need 10 or 15 callas. Did I say cannas? No, cannas. These are cannas. So we really probably should just in the spring get rid of a couple. But for now, we will just pull them out of the containers. Again, they will dry in the garage for a couple of weeks. Last year we just put them in the basement with all of the dirt on them. Didn't even clean them off, and they did absolutely fine, as you can see, well enough to even multiply. So thank you for coming along today, guys, on the start of our fall cleanup. We are by no means anywhere near being finished. This will take us weeks to do. We typically don't do really long videos on us cleaning up for that reason. It just starts to get repetitive. I hope I covered some meaningful topics in this video. Again, there are reasons to clean up in the fall. There are reasons to clean up in the spring. What it comes down to really is what you want to do in your garden and what feels right to you. Again, thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.